I want you to picture something. Go to that specific drawer in your bedroom. You know the one.
Oh, everybody has that drawer.
Right, maybe it's tucked all the way in the back, sitting in a slightly faded velvet box. You open it up and there it is, that piece of family jewelry.
The heavy grandmother's brooch or the antique ring.
Exactly. It is absolutely overflowing with cherished family memories, but let's be totally honest with ourselves for a second. It is completely, fundamentally out of sync with your personal style.
Yeah, you love the person who gave it to you, but you wouldn't be caught dead wearing it to brunch.
No, never.
I mean, it's a very specific, very universal type of guilt. You respect the object, but you have no practical use for it in its current physical form.
Hmm.
So it just sits in the dark, acting more like a relic than an accessory.
And that is the exact core problem we are tackling in today's deep dive. We've got our hands on this really insightful guide, simply titled Heirloom Jewelry, and it breaks down how to modernize vintage pieces for a contemporary world.
Yeah, our mission today is to explore how you can take these unworn, outdated family treasures and transform them into fiercely contemporary, highly wearable pieces,
Without sacrificing an ounce of their sentimental soul.
which is the ultimate tightrope walk of jewelry redesign, honoring the craftsmanship of the past while, navigating the physical and aesthetic realities of living in the present.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because there is a massive emotional conflict right out of the gate here. We have this gap between preserving a family legacy and actually wanting to put the item on your body in daily life.
Right, it feels like a betrayal to change it.
Yeah, before we even get into the nuts and bolts of how a jeweler cuts or melts or resets these pieces, we really have to address the why. Let me throw an analogy at you right away to play devil's advocate.
Go for it.
Isn't altering an antique piece of jewelry kind of like putting a modern electric engine into a classic vintage car?
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right, sure, it runs better, it's better for the environment, but don't we lose the original, authentic charm that made it an antique in the first place? Doesn't it become a betrayal of its history?
Well, what's fascinating here is how we define the concept of value when it comes to an heirloom. If we stick with your car analogy, a vintage car that never ever leaves the garage because it constantly breaks down isn't really a car anymore.
It's a sculpture.
Exactly, it's a sculpture. The source material highlights that the core benefit of redesigning is about keeping the narrative alive. Jewelry's true historical value comes from being worn, from absorbing the life experiences of the wearer.
So by modernizing it, you aren't destroying the piece.
No, not at all. You are actively preserving the family legacy by rescuing it from a drawer and ensuring it travels into the future.
But why does it need rescuing in the first place? I mean, why can't I just wear an Edwardian ring exactly as it was built?
Because the physical reality of how we live has drastically changed. Many antique designs were engineered for entirely different eras, where daily activities, clothing fabrics, and even social expectations were completely different.
Oh, that makes sense. Like they weren't typing on keyboards all day.
Right. A massive, protruding, intricate cocktail ring made structural sense for a 1920s formal dinner where the wearer had gloves on and wasn't doing manual tasks.
Right.
Today, that same tall, fragile setting is going to catch on your laptop bag, snag your knit sweater.
Or just get banged against a car door.
Exactly. The physical environments we navigate require different structural considerations. Modern adjustments bridge that gap, making the pieces comfortable and practical for daily wear.
Plus, I saw the guide notes that a professionally redesigned heirloom can actually enhance both its sentimental and its market value simply because it becomes a relevant, functional piece of fashion again.
It takes the history off pause.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
So let's get into the actual alchemy of this. How do jewelers pull off these physical transformations?
Yeah, let's look at this logically.
Right, starting from the pieces that sit on our clothes and moving down to the pieces that take the most physical abuse. Let's start with the chest. Specifically, brooches.
Oh, the classic drawer dweller.
Nothing screams antique jewelry quite like a heavy, ornate brooch. The guide mentions them prominently.
Brooches are the ultimate example of the shifting times. They often feature this incredibly intricate, time-consuming craftsmanship that you just don't see in modern mass production.
But pinning them is an issue, right? Like they're so
Heavy, yeah. As a format, pinning a heavy piece of metal and stone to modern fabrics is a structural nightmare. Modern clothes, like silk blouses, lightweight cotton t-shirts, activewear blends, they simply do not have the structural integrity to support an ounce of gold and diamonds without sagging or tearing.
So what's the fix? How do we wear them without ruining our clothes?
Well, the guide suggests a very elegant mechanical solution, converting them into versatile pendant necklaces. Jewelers remove the heavy pin mechanism from the back and carefully solder a hidden bail.
That's the loop that a chain runs through, right?
Exactly, they attach it to the top of the piece.
That seems like a small change, but it totally shifts the center of gravity. Instead of a bulky item dragging down a lapel, it becomes a fluid piece resting flat on the collarbone.
Supported entirely by the back of the neck. It allows the original craftsmanship to be admired in a format that works with human anatomy rather than against modern textiles.
Okay, so if a pendant solves the weight issue on our chest, how do we handle the pieces that take the most physical abuse every single day?
You mean our hands?
Yeah, our hands. Let's talk about rings and resetting antique gemstones.
Yeah.
I see these gorgeous old stones, but the metal setting around them looks like a medieval fortress.
Yeah, a lot of metal.
The guide mentions updating the setting to something called a minimalist bezel. Now, I'm used to seeing stones held up by little metal claws. So what makes a bezel different, and why is it better for an antique stone?
That medieval fortress you're picturing is usually a very tall prong setting, which is incredibly vulnerable to modern daily life. A prong can snag, bend, and leave the stone exposed.
Which is terrifying for an heirloom.
Completely. A bezel setting entirely changes the physics of how the stone is held. Instead of tiny claws, a jeweler creates a custom cup of metal that perfectly matches the shape of the gem.
Oh, so it sits inside the cup.
Yes, the stone is placed inside, and then the jeweler uses a burnishing tool to physically press and fold a continuous thin lip of metal completely over the very edge of the stone.
Wait, so it's basically hugging the entire perimeter of the gem with a solid wall of metal.
Yes, and that solid wall is a shock absorber. If you bang your hand against a steering wheel, the impact hits the metal wall of the bezel rather than the fragile edge of a 100-year-old diamond.
Oh, wow. So it was mechanically far safer for antique stones, while simultaneously offering a very sleek, modern, uninterrupted visual line.
It really does. It's safe and stylish.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I was reading the section on rings, and it brings up something called an east-west gemstone placement.
Ah, yes, the east-west setting.
Help me visualize this. How does changing the compass direction of a stone make it look contemporary?
Well, it plays with optical expectations. Traditionally, elongated stones, like an oval, an emerald cut, or a marquise, they are set north-south. That means the long side of the stone runs parallel to your finger, pointing toward your knuckle.
Right, that's what we all picture when we think of a classic ring.
Exactly. An east-west setting simply rotates that exact same stone 90 degrees. So the long edge sits horizontally across the width of your finger.
Wait, so the jeweler hasn't cut the stone, they haven't changed the fundamental shape, they've literally just turned it sideways in a new band.
That's all it takes. By shifting that physical orientation, it completely disrupts the traditional visual silhouette we're all conditioned to expect from a ring.
It makes an antique, potentially stuffy diamond suddenly look edgy, geometric, and entirely custom.
It proves you don't have to destroy a stone to radically alter its vibe.
Another technique the source mentions for rings is snacking. So instead of breaking down the original heirloom ring at all, you just lean into layering.
Right, you keep the antique ring exactly as it is.
Yeah, but you sandwich it between very sleek, starkly modern bands. It's like framing a highly ornate Renaissance painting in a completely unadorned matte black gallery frame.
The contrast is what makes it work. The modern bands ground the vintage piece in today's fashion, turning what might look like an outdated relic into the deliberate focal point of a curated collection.
Okay, moving down the body, I want to tackle the most frustrating drawer dwellers, orphaned earrings.
Oh, the absolute worst.
Right, you lose one and the other just sits there forever mocking you. The guide talks about converting single earrings into pendants or bracelet charms.
Yes, it's a great solution.
I'm trying to picture this. It's kind of like taking a single beautiful, intricately carved architectural column from a ruined building, and instead of leaving it in the rubble, you lay it flat and use it as the centerpiece for a brand new dining table.
I love that analogy.
You preserve the craftsmanship, but totally change its structural utility.
Mechanically, that's a very accurate way to look at it. An earring is fundamentally a small, contained decorative element. By snipping off the earring post and attaching a jump ring, a jeweler instantly changes its function.
But wait, let me play devil's advocate here. Isn't an earring fundamentally lighter and far more fragile than a charm?
They usually are, yes.
I mean, an earring just sits on a lobe.
Mhm.
A bracelet charm dangles from a wrist that's typing, cooking, and banging into desks all day. How does a jeweler reinforce that so the piece doesn't just shatter?
That's a crucial point, and it's where the jeweler's engineering expertise comes in. They don't just attach a ring and call it a day.
Okay, so what do they do?
A professional will often solder a solid backing plate of gold or silver behind the delicate filigree of the earring to give it structural rigidity. They might build a small metal basket to protect the back of the stones from taking direct hits against a desk.
That makes perfect sense. You're basically armor plating it for a new life.
Exactly. They reinforce the architecture so it can survive its new environment.
So we've walked through the physical changes on a micro level.
Mhm.
Shifting weight, hammering bezels, rotating stones, reinforcing earrings. Now let's zoom out. How do these personal transformations align with the massive macro level trends happening in the fashion industry right now?
Well, the timing for modernizing heirlooms couldn't be better, largely because the current fashion zeitgeist is aggressively moving away from generic cookie-cutter mass production.
Right, people want something unique.
Exactly. The source points to minimalist luxury as a major driving force. Modern aesthetics favor clean lines over chaotic ornamentation.
Which perfectly explains why stripping away that tall medieval fortress prong setting works so well. You simplify an overly complicated heirloom, and suddenly its elegance speaks for itself.
Yeah. Another massive defining trend the text highlights is the embrace of mixed metals. For decades, the rigid rule of fashion was you never, ever mixed gold and silver.
Oh yeah, you were a gold person or a silver person, never both.
Right. Today, intentionally combining yellow gold, platinum, and rose gold is the peak of contemporary styling. And updating an heirloom almost always involves this naturally.
So what does this all mean for the final piece? If I mix a sleek modern platinum band with my great-grandmother's ornate rose gold, isn't that a fashion contradiction? Doesn't the old clash with the new?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that perceived clash is the exact visual tension modern fashion is striving for.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the source emphasizes that today's consumers crave pieces that tell a complex story. They want authenticity. The juxtaposition of old, warm rose gold against cold, new platinum isn't a contradiction. It's a conversation between generations.
It's a visual timeline.
Exactly. That unique combination of eras provides a luxurious, bespoke quality that a brand new, uniformly cast piece of jewelry simply cannot replicate.
It proves the piece has lived a life. You can't manufacture that kind of history in a factory. And speaking of manufacturing, the guide points out how repurposing heirloom jewelry aligns heavily with sustainable fashion.
It is the ultimate form of sustainable luxury. When you redesign existing jewelry, you drastically reduce the demand for newly mined materials.
Because you aren't ripping new precious metals or gemstones out of the earth?
Precisely. The source mentions fashion platforms like Apparelizer, which are actively highlighting this growing consumer demand for timeless, eco-friendly fashion investments.
It's an interesting angle. For anyone who might feel slightly guilty about tearing apart a family piece, knowing you are making a highly ethical, zero-footprint fashion choice might be the push they need. And the last macro trend the guide notes is personalized jewelry, adding custom engravings inside the new band or